Greetings, my biter friends. Ben Pearson, the Roaster Tracker, and we're back for a special bonus episode. I've officially finished recording this series, but I wanted to talk about the complex rail network here because I really do enjoy how we did this. So we're going to start here at one end, and I'm just going to go through kind of the map here. We have a number of these outpost type of stations. And the way these outpost stations work, I have a rotating belt that will tell me how many objects are. And one thing is key, they need to be read belt contents and hold. That is important so that way, and not the enable disable, so that way you can count how much stuff is on here and the belt will just keep going. So we can see here there's 28 on here at any one time. And for an outpost, you really probably want to keep to about 40 crates possible in this system. So this is maybe a little bit high, but not terribly high. Reason 40, you want to be able to have 2 train loads, whatever your train size is, and that's what I've decided. I also have a charging station here. There's a couple of different designs that we worked through. One of them will pull all of the batteries, put them in a crate, and then charge them and put them back in. This is good for a station where you're not gonna be there for a lot of time. For one that you're going to spend more time at, there's a different design that we'll see. So that's a copper outpost. A couple of other things worthy of note. There's no special things. We have one train for each copper outpost. Each of the outposts has their own number. And they will go deliver it to wherever has the need. So we'll see what that looks like in a bit. A little bit more complex system here. We have a whole bunch of different trains. This is our, what's it called? The Cobalt processing station. So Cobalt has a whole bunch of intermediate products. You take this cobalt crust here that's unloaded from the ships that we are massively unloading, and it will get processed first into, it has some chance of having stone, copper, iron, cobalt. A lot of different things can come from this, and some that you have to even reprocess. So the cobalt is processed. In the process, we also create tailings, so you can have titanium and you can have lead. So, and we even created a few other things. We created the charged batteries here that are used by the rocket production units. So there's a whole bunch of different things here. And because each of these, has their own loop, we each have their own individual loop. But the crates that are being processed through, it looks like we may have an issue here. Oh no, this is fine. The empty crates are all passed along in here in a loop that goes to most of these. Oh, we feed it over here to the Cobalt processor. Interesting. And then, so all of the empty crates will eventually come along here. They'll go along here, all the way back, and then forth. So I have one common loop. We don't try to do an open loop system. The reason being is it can kind of make up for some issues. You otherwise would have to deal with putting in crates at a bunch of individual points, as opposed to just here. And one thing that's important to note, and we have this in rocket fuel, when you're taking stuff out, you have a 1% chance of damaging the containers. So the containers will, over time, start to fall apart. Something to keep in mind. Now, among these, supply stations, there's a couple of delivery stations. The best, example of this is the sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid, we have a bunch of these train stops. It looks like there's 5 of them total currently. And they all have some condition where they're enabled, disabled, and they are set to whatever number I feel is the minimum amount of sulfuric acid before we send a shipment out. We only have one sulfuric acid train, and we'll see what that looks like here later on. But that's just a way to keep the supply, somewhat manageable. You don't want to have a train stopped here for forever. So we come here, we dump off the sulfuric acid, and we leave. Simple. Explosives is another supply thing. And you'll see here that it has an enable-disable condition where we are set to 4. Now, that basically, I'm counting the belts here. I'm saying, hey, we need to have at least 4 explosives containers here at all time. If we have less than that, then this station will become enabled, which currently it is disabled. You can see the little red blinky light here. That red blinky light shows that, hey, even if we have explosives available, we're not going to ship them here. So they'll be stored up at the point of shipment. Another point here, this is the other design. We'll just pull them directly into the charger and pull them directly out. This works better when you have a longer period of time. But these guys tend to stay here for a long time. Some other things of note, we're loading on empty containers, such as will come from this guy, red circuits. Well, this actually should not be a stack inserter, but that's okay. We'll show a better example of that later on. But you should limit the number of things. Now, all of these trains have the same thing. They have a full cargo at one station, and then they're unloading up to... They'll have to have the same number of containers back in. The way that these containers work, if I click here, you can see that they stack in groups of 10, but if we look at, say, this guy, you can see that they will only put one full container, or they can put a stack of 10 containers. So we have to do some kind of careful combination thing to make sure that we're not going to put too many containers back in. We want to have the same number of containers go in as out. So this station is our blue circuit and related products, and it is a good example of a bunch of different products that are created. You can see another loop here that we create through. All of the empty containers, when we're unloading them, will go through this loop. Now, each one of these, this takes in a lot of different products here. This takes in lead, steel, and so on and so forth. The inserters here are set to load only if there is less than 20 on the train. And you can see, we're sending lead if there's less than 2, very similar to what we've seen before. This one has the read train contents though, which is going to be sent along here. It would also be sent on this green power line, but that doesn't really matter because nobody pays attention to that. So I can see this green power line, this is how many different things are waiting. You can see there's a bunch of plastic, some stone, some lead, some steel, and not that many green circuits. Green circuits, of course, you can never, ever, ever have enough green circuits. It's just how this game goes. Once you start feeding them into, blue circuits, that's how it goes. So, similar for the only outputs here, well, there's one other one, but we have blue circuits and the productivity science that are the two primary outputs. They have a common belt of the input containers we can see here. The outputs go to their individual trains where we can see, is there anything waiting? This train is totally full. Nope. Everything is getting loaded onto the train, so there's nothing waiting in the loop for these guys. We also have a couple of other loading circuits, which I did not realize that we would need, so we had to add some more stations because we kind of ran out of room here. So these guys, a similar thing. This is rocket control units. You can see 8. It has a control loop, so we can see how many there is. Red circuits actually has quite a few. It has 47 in here. Sometimes, but not always, I will stop the bottling process if we have too many of something. And so, if we have more than 27 here, I just say stop feeding anything in here. We're going to save the red circuits for other stuff. That tends to happen for this kind of thing where it's an intermediate product that, we need a fair bit somewhere else. The only place that we actually need red circuits is in Cobalt production here. And we need red circuits, but it's not tons of them. We need it for our battery packs. Why? Oh, looks like we have a missing signal. We're missing a bunch of signals. Well, that's not good. We'll go ahead and put these ghosted in. Oh, we had some signals there. That's curious. Little bizarre thing. Anyways, the rocket control units, this is another example, and this is the most advanced one. We have, the inputs are all belted together. We can see at a common thing how much all of the inputs happen here. And they're all linked to the train stations. The train stations all have both read and enable, so that way we put the right number of containers in. It's really about all there is to say there. Titanium is very rarely picked up, but it is very common. There's a couple of different places that can use it in our system. So we needed to have some kind of a better system here for keeping the titanium. And basically, how this works is we have a certain number of titanium in the system here. Once there's enough, then this train station is enabled. So you can see that this is enabled for pickup. And then if we need to have somewhere, take the titanium, then they will go to the one that has a open pickup, and they'll fill up real quick, and they will go drop it off to where they need to. As things stand right now, though, we don't actually have anywhere that is needing titanium, so the trains are just not there. They don't need to come pick anything up because there's just nothing to pick up. It worked really good when we only had one titanium station. Right now we have two, and so it works a little bit less well. We have our lubricant that is very similar to how the sulfuric acid is picked up. You note the different number though. Early on, we needed tons of titanium. It's a little bit less important now. We can see like this station is actually dead. Although, I guess, oh, this guy's still active. Never mind. So we can still produce a little bit, but yeah, that's of some note. The rail refinery stations, we have one special one for just the explosives for similar reasons. It's something we determined we needed later, but it has a similar kind of thing. Rocket fuel is another example similar to the titanium. We have a bunch of different pickup points. So for instance, right here is a pickup point, but this station's disabled because we have rocket fuel there. And so they all have their own little conditions, but each station can determine what they need. And we have a full setup so that we can fill these trains as quickly as we possibly can. The refinery, we can check the health of it just by waving over here, and you can see how much of all the different liquids there are, and based off of various conditions, then we can know how well the refinery is operating. We have 2 different boats carrying oil, which seems to be a good number. And, sometimes we're able to get away with one. We only use one for our main port here, because that seems to be more than enough. Now, let's get into the kind of interesting things. These shipping lanes, I did not want to have a ship that was completely full of one particular product. So we had to come up with something. If we go peek in here, you can see what the hold is. It's full of a bunch of different possible components. But one of the big concerns with doing some kind of a setup is you don't want to have things be too backed up. And so you can see everything here is on a circuit, so we can see how much stuff this is. We have a whole train station here for dropping off different types of things. And these stations will be enabled or disabled depending on how much stuff there is. And I'm just looking, we can see space science we would accept, productivity science and blue circuits are the only things that we are currently accepting here. So, you know, space science, yeah, there's nothing in any of these right now. So we want to have more of those enabled, but you can see we have tons of iron plates, tons of copper, steel, titanium, and so on. So we're not requesting it. So the station is disabled, trains will not show up there. Whatever goods we have will still get loaded in here. So we see that the copper is probably going to get loaded in here. Yep. And now that we're seeing a bunch of copper in here, we see that there is no copper in the system, and the copper train just became enabled. So we're going to request some copper be dropped off here now. So they all have their own conditions. It's a little bit of give and take. You want to be able to have some in buffer, but not too much, and it just takes some experience. The amount of stuff in each ship too, it takes some experience too, to figure out exactly what the best amount is. And I will not say that I always get it right. When it comes to unloading, we have a train station for each thing. We are unloading each good into their own dedicated thing. And you see that each one of these, other than space science, is wired. Let's go ahead and wire space science just because. I love that we can do things from afar. Space science will be enabled if there is less than 4 space science. So we'll drop it off. So we can see here at a quick glance how many containers are in each loop. You see, you know, there's a lot of these. We had a couple of these that we did not have the conditions set right, and as a result they ended up with a huge glut. Like titanium, we have way more titanium than we're ever gonna need. Same with low density structures. It's jammed up, it's not even moving. Considered sending some of it back, although to be fair, we're getting better here. So each one of these will have some different condition to look to see how many of these crates do we want to have. And the idea, really, you probably don't want to have more than 20. Well, maybe a little bit more than that. You want to have a couple of train loads worth of stuff. If you have something that's being sent a lot, like copper here, you'll want to have it be a little bit higher, so that way you can have multiple train loads. But, and this is one thing that's important to note, this circuit connects only to the loads here. It will measure how much is in the waiting train depot. We have a secondary circuit here that measures at a different point, and we'll show where that point is here. But basically, this is how much is at the base, and we can see here, you know, there's a lot of most stuff except for, looks like cobalt ingots. There's not a lot, which is not really surprising. We're setting these traffic lights to be red, so that way the train cannot go, even if it's full. It's going to stay put unless there is a demand for it. So right now, the only 2 trains that are enabled are this one, that is the Cobalt, and the Space Science. Only 2 trains that we have a demand for at the base, although that may vary as time goes on. At the base, we have 2 identical stations. They can be delivered to either one. What will happen here is all of these guys are set to blacklist the empty containers. They will unload everything except for empty containers. So we don't have to worry about what types of things are on here. And when we have a train come through here, it's going to pull up here, unload all of its stuff into this belt, and we'll show what happens there in a bit. And then it will fill in with the empty containers. We may be a little bit low here on empty containers, but it's something to know. The containers here are dumped into this central belt that will go rotate around the entire thing. And you know, we could do this, we could use bigger containers here, but basically I put all of the things into a common container here. This is where they're waiting to be unloaded. And this is what is being measured. You can see each one of these has a sensor. So we have one for steel, one for titanium, for sulfur, lead ore, and so on and so forth. If we have two stations then that are needed because we had a lot of processing of it at one point in time, then I have this kind of a setup. For iron, we actually needed 4 belts, so we put a, somewhat similar belt loop thing where all of the empty containers are getting dumped eventually onto this belt. And that's the key thing. All the empty containers need to be dumped onto the same belt, so that way they will all become available for whichever train stops by. And yeah. So we have one of these for each of the goods, and then we have a full line of that particular good. So let's just, for instance, we're going to, how much space science do we have here? We'll go ahead and send this off. We have just a couple of packs. We probably, yeah, the Titan steel production here is kind of low. If we were gonna upgrade this base, we would need to figure out a way to improve the Titan steel production, and really that would involve using a different site. Maybe this one, we could set up another train station where we're making a bunch of Titan steel, and then we can have it drop off here. If we wanted to, we could expand it, and the new station would use all of the same types of setups that we have here. So one of the titanium drop stations is here, but we can see we have a bunch of titanium. It's this station. So because we have enough titanium, then we don't have a drop point there. It's just not needed. Okay, so the space science train should be here, and you can see it is loaded. Now I'm actually going to send this back empty. It would normally wait until it had 20 containers, but we didn't load in 20 containers, so I kind of want to keep that somewhat intact. So this next boat, actually doesn't have a space for the space science packs. Looks like it probably has where this blue circuit is, so it just didn't have the room for it, because that was one of the things that I was kind of late and had to shift the inventories of. But eventually we'll find a ship that has some empty capacity for our blue circuits, and it will start to load in this space science. We haven't even got the space science all the way here yet, though. Yep. Takes a little while to unload and travel, make its way. Oh, there it is. It seems like for whatever reason, this setup will have one wasted pack. Just kind of an annoying quirk of the system. There. We'll put space science there. There we go. So that space science module will now eventually get loaded in, and it will get unloaded over here, where it will get loaded into this train. I think that's really all there is to explaining this system. Oh, uh, for the other stations that we have here, like this lead ore, this is another good example of way too much processing, but that's fine. Ooh. We're not totally dead. There's not a lot of lead left, but we have a lot in this containers here. So this train station, there was only one lead outpost on the main island. So this train station will stay here, and it's going to wait until the lead is below whatever the threshold. You can see this green wire network extends all throughout this island. I had an iron outpost here at one point in time, still conditioned as such, but the network goes there. It goes to our refinery here as well, so they can see how much sulfur is there. And it's just a very, very handy thing. And I found this to work quite well, actually. It took some refining. We still have way too much low density circuits here. We can still see this big giant glut here. And then there's a bunch in other places, but we're slowly but surely getting rid of some of this excess. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope this will help you to make more interesting factories using Factorio Freight Forwarding. Thanks for all you guys do, and until next time, keep on tracking. Take care. We will see you then. Bye-bye.